All right, just a quick video here talking about the benefits of spray sealing different types of media. This one happens to be a semi-gloss cardstock using dye-based inks and then a buildup of your alcohol inks. Okay, so if you know about alcohol inks and layering them, you'll know that you can layer colors down to a certain extent, but if you're going over the top of existing layers of alcohol inks, adding more of it will just kind of, it can apply to an extent, but if you keep applying it, what you end up doing is kind of removing the bottom layers, because it puts the bottom layers back into solution. You know, the top layers of alcohol just go in and dissolve whatever you've already laid down for the most part. Okay, so that was just going on with a kind of a warm reddish tan type of color, warmish, I don't know, skin tone. All right, now as you can see, I'm going back into this and it's really dissolving that previous color, and you're getting that little bit of a textural kind of buildup from the additional alcohol ink on the perimeter of the mark like that. Now, I like that type of texturing from alcohol pens like that. I use it, I think it looks really good as the bark of the tree, but let's go in here and just make a point right here of dissolving the bottom layers. See, as I go in there, it's removing that existing layer, and I can go down practically to the white of the paper. Well, actually, the base layer, dye-based inks, the water-based inks, okay? So I want to add additional layers to this, so the only way that I'm going to be able to do that is to lock down those existing layers. Let me get this to where I want it first. All right, let's see, I'm going to make this side a little bit lighter and that side's going to be darker. All right, so I'm going to go in here, and this is with a lighter tone, and I'm using it almost like a blender color, or a blender brush, I should say, which is the absence of any color. But I'm going in here and adding in these additional textures like that, but I want to tint those textures with additional color, and we'll do that after spray sealing. But you can see this, I can only go so far with these additions, and it's really just kind of removing color. You can see this right here where it gets on this pen, and I remove it out and it becomes that color right there. So let's go and we'll spray seal this, and we'll come back and I'll show you how we can add additional layers on here. That's the same thing that's going on with this one right here. I couldn't really get any darker because of that alcohol dissolving type of characteristic, okay? At least on this type of paper, when you're using a more porous, absorbent style of paper, a matte or an uncoated matte, you can apply and apply and apply, because more of the ink is getting absorbed past the surface of the uncoated styles of cardstock. Okay, so let's get these a little bit more kind of situated with what will end up being base layer colors. Okay, and we'll come back in and we'll add some additional tones on the top of it, and you can see how rich a surface we can achieve by multiple layers, but sealed in layers. Okay, we're spray sealed. The characteristic of the existing media doesn't really change too much with the spray fixatives. It might get a little bit deeper, like spray sealing can do at times, especially with the glossy cardstock. I have a little bit of glare on this one right here. But for the most part, spray fixatives are designed to not change the characteristic, but just to lock down your media so that you can apply additional layers without kind of influencing the bottom layers on there. And again, it's mostly for things like what they say on here: pastels, chalk, drawings, pencils, prevents smudging and wrinkling, allows easy rework, acid-free and archival, safe. All right, so for me, using wet media like this in this manner. It's one of those simple tricks that can really bring some additional depth and richness into your piece, and it's just like the simplest thing to do is just to spray seal the piece down. So let's try to go for some additional layers with this color right here. And as I'm doing this, you can see it's just applying right over the top of the existing media, and you don't see it digging down into the surface. Now, I mean, I can do this multiple times. I can add a layer like that and then spray seal it and then add another layer. Now, if I go into this and I try to blend this layer out, you can do that, but it's not going to go in and dissolve the bottom layers. You see that like that? I can kind of go in there and I'm dissolving that bottom layer, or the top, the most recent layer underneath this one, okay? But it's not going in and messing with, those other layers underneath the surface of my spray sealant. All right, so let's do that, and let's get these to a little bit richer. Let's try this lighter one in the lighter area right here. It's not really doing too much because this one's really light right here. It looks like this one's the one that's really creating a big difference right here in terms of my deep richness. Okay, go a bit like that. Come in here like so with this one. I might go one more layer of spray sealant. I'm thinking about hitting some of these areas with a little bit of a deeper tone. Let's see, this one's getting a little bit too reddish, so let's go back in here and blend out that red a little bit, like that. All right. This one right here is kind of developing kind of a harder transition into this green, so I'm coming in with a greenish tinge like this, and we'll blend out some of that. We can blend out other areas. I mean, it's not just for trees, but just any kind of usually for me it's a darker area because I build up my colors from light into dark, so the darker ones are the ones that without spray sealing I tend to have a problem with, because the darker tones are really built up over those lighter ones, so I get a lot of those base layer colors that that need to be locked down. Okay, coming into it with this green like this, creating this nice transition from these this green kind of carpeted forest floor area, and I'm coming up into the tree like that. So again, I don't want like a green trunk in here. I have a greenish tinge right in here, but that's through layering. But anyways, yeah, that green over the top of brown looks really good. Okay, let's turn this a little bit more, a little bit less green. Okay, let's go like this, blend it out a little bit, and we'll blend in that deeper green here. Like that. And you can see everything is kind of glowing just a little bit more on here through the use of additional layers. Okay. It's just it's a really fun technique too. It's really beautiful watching kind of just something start to glow a little bit more. It's a technique where using analogous colors right next to each other. Analogous colors are colors right next to each other on the color wheel. But on this one, we're kind of actually glazing colors right over the top of one another, just kind of in a range of tones like this. So these are, can be seen as kind of analogous colors. They're really close to each other, so they really blend together really well. But we're layering them on top of one another like that. and it's really creating a beautiful color glow within the piece. So you can give kind of that illusion of kind of lighting coming from within the scene. You know, it's really not. It's all reflected light, of course, because we don't have, you know, LEDs or something like that behind this paper, making it look as though, you know, everything's glowing. But it gives the illusion of it. And you don't have to do this. I mean, you can go for 2 or 3 layers of colors, and you can get a pretty rich tone, but not nearly as rich as just kind of locking them down and adding kind of more and more. At some point in time, you know, it's a little bit of overkill, you know, when you've achieved your full kind of value scale. But, I don't know, you can add quite a bit to it, I'm finding. So down here on these rocks, too, you can see these rocks. I mean, they look pretty good, but now I've locked down the colors on these ones, and let's go into these, and this is just a little bit of additional bluish tinge. And let's add another layer onto some of these rocks. I already added a lot of pigment ink on here yesterday, just showing people kind of the kind of running the full spectrum of textural depth in the scenes. But I know that, you know, I could add more to these alcohol, you know, based areas, colored areas, and just achieve a little bit more richness. And why not? It doesn't take very much more time to do this. And spray sealing, you know, you spray it, and it takes, you know, I don't know, less than 60 seconds, and it dries really fast too. Spray fixatives are meant to, for someone to spray the piece and just start working on it immediately, pretty much, because that's what it's for. It's like someone drawing, and, you know, they're drawing away, and it's getting kind of more and more built up, and they need to spray seal it and go right back into working on the pieces. Especially with that dry media, like, you know, charcoal, graphite, and pastels. Alright, see that right there? Kind of makes those rocks seem a little bit more dimensional, adding a little bit more shadow to them, but you can't add more shadow to them with the darker colors if they're not locked down, because you're going to be just lifting up some of the lighter colors that you've already applied. Shadows around the base of these rocks like that. Just using the same kind of bluish tinge right here that I've used on you know, the rocks down here. You can use it right here in the grass, and remember, these colors are transparent, so, you know, when I add it into the grassy area over the top of green, it doesn't necessarily look like the slightly violet blue tone. Alright, that's a little bit of blue. I'm adding a little bit more than I intended to right here, but I think it's looking pretty good. Here's my blender pen. I don't use too much, but I normally use a lighter blue, but I don't know. Just grabbing it right now, I didn't see it, so I'm just grabbing the blender, blending in some of those layers that I just locked down, or applied over the lockdown colors. All right. So I need to add a little bit more shadow behind her, but if I do it with light gray, I'm just going to be removing this color, I think, right here that I just used right back in here. So we'll spray seal, and we'll add our finishing touches as far as the colors go. All right. One more additional layer of spray sealing, which will probably be enough. But let's go in and anchor our figure down a little bit more. Okay, she's laying, you know, right up against this tree. I'm going with a little bit of gray here. That's a little bit too light still, but let's move up into a darker gray. Let's see if I have one here. pretty sure I have one. I'm looking through 3 sets of pens here. I don't want to go to black. That would be a little bit too extreme. Yeah. Here's a few different gray tones right here. Let me see about kind of a pretty deep, warm gray here. That's pretty dark. That looks okay. I'll need to blend that out quite a bit, though. So I'm just kind of laying it down to kind of get a swatch of this ink onto the surface. And let's do the same thing with that over here. And again, I can do this now because of the spray sealant, or spray fixative. Alright, I think that should be enough, and then I'm going to go back in and I'll blend out using the existing colors that I've used before. So I'll just kind of blend this in. Like this. Oh, I'm digging into the previous color quite a bit. This one's really, it's a brand new pen, so it's like super, super juicy. So I'm almost removing like all of that gray that I just laid down. So I'll just be careful not to do that too much. I'll go with a little bit of a lighter touch, going like kind of like this, and just kind of spreading that color around a little bit like so, and then blend it out from there on the perimeter. Let's put a little bit of shadow underneath her too. These are the kind of those fun little, I don't know, kind of super detailed types of additions that you can do. They're really fun to do, kind of adding that detail work into your pieces and kind of fine-tuning it. I don't do this like around everything. I'm not going to look at a tiny little rock and say, let's get that shadow, you know, kind of applied, you know, to define, you know, a really insignificant kind of visual in a piece. But since this is the kind of the focal point of the scene, you know, it's a good idea to bring kind of a reasonable amount of detail to her depiction, meaning detail, and that you know, she would be casting a shadow. You want to give her, you want to have her kind of sitting against the tree and in this grass right here. So by doing so, you add some shadow work around her, so that she's not just like a see-through kind of figure. Okay. All right. Now, the spray sealant wasn't needed to do what I'm going to do right here, but sometimes it's easier just to cut our figure out of a, you know, a piece of paper afterwards and just to drop her in like I did on my 11 by 17 piece. But on this one, I just wanted to just add everything just directly into the scene. So what I'm going to do, because I got some ink onto her hands and, you know, things like that, when I was toning in and darkening some areas, I'll just go and redefine some of those lighter areas here. On her form, I got a little bit of green in her hand when I was doing that green kind of toning around her with dye-based inks and watercolor inks, but with these paint pens in the set form, you know, there's a lot of different colors. On this one, it's the 42 color set, so you have a lot of different tones and values to choose from within whatever hue you're working with. And two, you can kind of render her a little bit more. You can get rid of some lines. You've heard of that kind of, what is that, lineless, or I forget what that type of stamping people talked about. But basically, it's getting rid of, you know, there's so many designs out there. They're the linear, that have defined by outlines, and that flattens out an image more. It looks flatter when you have an outline around it, but when you don't have an outline, things are defined more tonally and by light. So you can kind of get rid of like her shoulder area right there. It just looks, you know, a little bit more dimensional that way. And this one right here, I really got some tone right on her face like that. You can see it right there. So I'm just going to go back in and just kind of get some of that. I'll put some kind of lighting on her. Do that around her shoulder area where I got some brown on her from the, you know, the alcohol ink applications. Her arm, her hand's a little bit green too, you know, the green areas down here, so I'm just going over it with the paint pen. Okay. And let's see, let's bring some of this paint. The idea of this scene is to do much faster kind of depiction of this scene that I did in a 11 by 17 if you haven't seen that. But I don't know, I really love going in and adding in these like smaller details into my areas. They're really fun to do, and it kind of makes the entire surface kind of, I don't know, kind of sing, you know. It brings that textural kind of element into it, the vibrancy, and it's just a stronger depiction of light within the piece. This is the 0.7 millimeter paint pen. One of the things too about the spray sealing, I mean, this is a spray sealing video here, but the spray fixative, it sprays onto your surface with a little bit more of a textural type of application, you know, because you need a little bit of texturing for things like pastels and you know, your soft media graphites. So when things are really smooth, I mean, I use smooth papers for things like these pen applications like I'm doing right now, but having a slight bit of texture does allow for this pen like this to apply easier because it has something to grab onto from a textural standpoint, you know, rather than, I mean, these pens can be used on glass, but you probably wouldn't be able to like do this little sketchy work like this, like I'm doing right here with it, on a piece of glass because it's just so smooth. So having that little bit of tooth on the spray sealant allows me to go in and get these kind of finer types of, you know, in this case like a scribbly application of tone. So I'm adding a little bit of highlighting and texture. And like I said, for, you know, the alcohol inks, I like that textural kind of element that alcohol tends to provide, you know, when layered. And we're able to do a little bit of that, I don't know, kind of a different texture, but it's kind of the same idea of applying texture into a surface with the paint pens. I think I just dug up some pigment ink in this or something like that. Getting it flowing again here. I usually don't do this kind of line work too much because it just doesn't grab the paper, that like smooth papers, that easily. But I guess this is another kind of benefit of spray sealing here. You can get some really fine line work. This is a 7.7 millimeter, but when you're doing this kind of real scrapey kind of, I know you can almost do like cross hatching with it. You can get a really fine line that's probably more of a, I don't know, 0.2 or 3 millimeter application like that. See those little sketchy marks like that? A little bit too much, so I'll just kind of tone them down a little bit. I don't do this, so I'm getting a little bit more comfortable just as I do this here. As you're kind of interesting doing a little bit of a different mark than I'm used to doing. I'm usually doing dots. Let's see, let's kind of define this tree trunk a little bit more. I kind of forgot to do that in the video, in the live stream, but I was kind of short on time. I had to go. Alright, you can see a little trunk structuring, a little bit of the branches as well. Let's bring that up into this one too. Okay, see a little bit of that trunk in there. It just kind of provides structure for like a mass of, you know, orange and yellow dots. It says, okay, you know, this is a tree with some, you know, skeletal structuring to it. Yeah, right. I think that is about it. I might add a couple more things onto it. I'll take a look. I'll give it a little bit of time. I'll get back at it and analyze. Sometimes, you know, you gotta have things kind of sit around a little bit and then go back and look at it with some fresh eyes. I think a little bit more white pigment ink, you know, to push a little bit of depth into the same textural depth, that is. And I think that should be really fun to do. But I think that is it for now. All right, so anyways, the benefits of spray sealing in order to achieve color depth and richness, okay? But I'm finding that it's pretty good for textural depth too, if you want to use something like, you know, paint pens on there. I would guess that, okay, so spray sealing like that, when you seal these types of things off, you normally wouldn't be able to apply colored pencil over the top of alcohol inks because it's just too slippery, all right? But providing a little bit of texturing like that, I wouldn't be surprised if we can add in. Now, I've gone over this with some additional alcohol inks, so I need to spray seal it again, but I'm taking a guess that, yeah, see this colored pencil right here? I just want to get the side of this tree a little bit darker, and this is applying with no problem over here because of that textural quality of the spray fixative. Yeah, we can go in here and you know, apply more of this shadow depth into the scene. Oh, okay. So yeah, this is applying incredibly well over the top of that spray fixative, where there was just no chance of me doing that with just on the just straight alcohol inks. Wow, this is really doing well here. So you can kind of reverse. You can kind of, I built, you know, you can apply your raw types of colored pencil work over the paper, but then over the top of that, I applied alcohol inks. Not on this one, but on my previous one. But then you can apply your alcohol inks and go back to the colored pencil, apparently, with the spray fixative. So yet another potential usage of the spray fixative. Amazing. Yeah, those rocks look so much more rendered with this colored pencil in here, just adding in this additional shadow work, which is with the black colored pencil here. And it looks really rich too. The colored pencil isn't completely black. You know, you can see through it as far as a little bit of translucency. This is not applying in some areas where I applied more of that you know, a lot of layering with the alcohol ink, but it's not doing too bad. I was going to say I probably need to like spray seal it one more time in order to use this really effectively, but it's, I don't know. I guess I don't need to. I don't, you know, doing an additional coating of spray sealant wouldn't do anything harmful to the piece, you know, in terms of like muting out vibrancy or anything like that. But if you don't have to do it, why, you know, why do it? Makes me wonder about, you know, additional media on this type of thing that, you know, that I wasn't really thinking of. So I'll give it a little bit more thought, and, you know, if there's anything that I really feel that we can go back on here and apply. It'd be really interesting to do like some sort of misty thing with, I don't know, like a white pastel or something like that. You know, where I'm normally using just only white pigment ink for that purpose, but I don't know. Maybe a white pastel or colored pastels might work in some different areas to get some really extreme layering and textural layering and depth. I really especially like it on these tree trunks, just getting this little bit of additional tone down here. I mean, they're already dark in some areas, but it's just kind of nice doing a little bit more fine-tuned rendering on here, which I'm usually doing with other media, not going back to kind of these preliminary types of media or colors. Kind of capping off the top a little bit more with a, you know, darker value like that. Looks pretty good, huh? It directs the light a little bit more. Let's add some shadow right in here. I'm gonna get a little bit more gutsy with my applications and go a little bit darker right around the perimeter like this. This is a Prismacolor black. The Prismacolors are nice and soft too, so, you know, I mean, the softer the colored pencil, probably the easier it is to apply some of it on here. Remember, this is still, you know, a coated semi-gloss cardstock, so it's not inherently, you know, textural and, you know, with very much tooth to it at all, but I don't know, the spray sealant seems to have provided a little bit more for me to utilize in this type of application here. This is just black too. I guess you can come in here with like maybe a dark brown or something. Provided the pencil is soft enough to do that. Alright, look at that right there. I don't know about quite a difference, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, let's say it. I think it's quite a difference there. Alright, so anyways, benefits of spray sealants. I'm learning all the time, you know. I learned a little bit more on this one with a couple different types of media on here that I didn't think about with the colored pencil and a little bit of tooth for you know, the acrylic paint pen marks on here. So I don't know, I think it really looks good in terms of finishing this piece off, or these two pieces off. Alright, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and then hopefully you know, if you're thinking about utilizing any of this type of media on here, you'll think about the, you know, the spray fixatives, something like that. Thanks for watching.